So if we are going to establish or discover, if you want to discover the concept of tasawwuf, then I recommend, this is one of my basic principles, that we should first of all go to the Sufis and look at what they say, and we should not look at what they are doing or what they were doing or what some of their followers are doing. Why? This is based on a principle which I derive from the study of hadith. You know, the Prophet said something and he was doing something. Sometimes there was a difference. He, uh, he prohibited certain things, and then people saw him doing himself. So here, the action on the one hand and saying is on the other hand. So the principle here is that his words are to be measured, because you do not know what is the reason behind his action, why he is taking exception. So wherever there is someone in position of authority, and you are talking not in terms of morality, but in terms of law, in legal terms, then you have to look at the words. What is being said by the law is what you are bound by, and not what someone in the state or the judge himself is doing. You cannot take a plea in the court of law. But before we go to looking at these definitions or different concepts of Sufism as we find them in the writings of Sufis themselves, we need to agree on certain principles. So religion has to contain this concept of salvation. Salvation is one basic thing that must be there in something to make it religion. If the concept of salvation is absent, or if something is not being made necessary for salvation, then you cannot call it religion. This is the fifth principle. Okay, so these are the 5 principles on which our discussion is going to be. Since we are going to base part of our argument on the definitions that we find in the writings of Sufis, so there might be somebody might object to this approach, that there are as many definitions of tasawwuf as many Sufis are there. So how can you base any argument, any proof on definition of tasawwuf? Whose definition of tasawwuf is going to be accepted? Who is the authority? No one is authority. Every Sufi is a Sufi. So whom you are going to accept as the definer of Sufism? So in response to this valid objection, we have to consider this thing, that these definitions first of all are going to be presented here not positively but negatively. They are going to tell us not what the tasawwuf is basically, they are going to tell us what tasawwuf is later on. But the basic purpose is, let us try to discover what tasawwuf is not with the help of these definitions. If you see that all the definitions, if you see that no definition contains a specific thing, then that specific thing cannot be considered part of the tasawwuf. If something has not been considered to be part of the tasawwuf by any Sufi, old or new, then no one can blame tasawwuf for that. Right? Democratic principle. So what is being considered important by most of the Sufis should be given more weightage. If there are 1 or 2 things which are not considered important by the majority, then you can simply ignore that, or you can assign it to some out of place. So if you keep these 2 qualifications, then I think that definitions can become important. They can help us arrive at some conclusion. Okay, so the second part is it has some 20 to 22 definitions which I have don't worry, I'm not going to read them all. Very important and essential work in Tasawwuf, which is a book called Risala by Imam Kushairi. And this is one of the oldest and most authentic treatises of Tasawwuf. So there is one chapter on Tasawwuf in this book, and I have extracted certain definitions from this one. So this book has also been translated into, you simply skim through these definitions, do not read them, just look at them. You will see that there are certain concepts which are being repeated again and again and again. Every person or every second person is referring to this. I have mentioned them in bold. अखलाक, आदाब, हुस्न मुआमला. So my basic claim here, an overwhelming majority of Sufis has always been considering morality, akhlaq, to be the essence of tasawwuf. This is, claim, quotation, you can. So, the basic concept, generally speaking, without going into the details, what is the meaning of it, is akhlaq, morality. The relationship between human beings and relationship between you and God. It's also, it's also related. Let's look at definition number 17, which is by Sheikh Abdul Qadir. अल्लाह ताला के साथ सच्चा ताल्लुक और मखलूक के साथ अच्छा अखलाक रखना तसव्वुफ है. Look at the first one. तसव्वुफ सारे का सारा तसव्वुफ आदाब पर मुश्तमिल है. हर लम्हे, हर मकाम और हर वक्त और हर मकाम के लिए एक अदब हुआ करता है. चुनांचे जो इन आदाब की पाबंदी करता है वो रिजाल, मैंने इसको जानबूझ के ट्रांसलेट भी किया, लेकिन ये एक टेक्निकल टर्म है. लम्हे का तकाजा, व्हाट इज द डिमांड ऑफ द मोमेंट, व्हाट इज द रिक्वायरमेंट, moral requirement of the moment. 20 out of these 22 are related to tasawwuf, and the last two are related to akhlaq, and the last two are not directly related to akhlaq. They are related to some other things. For example, there is this interesting saying or interesting incident of the famous Sufi Hallaj, when he was being hanged, and he was being hanged. So somebody asked him, what is tasawwuf? So it is said that he said that the minimum degree of tasawwuf is what you see right now. I'm being hanged for saying certain things. And then, there is another definition which is talking about walidat. All other definitions are either explicitly or implicitly related to. Let us see what we can learn from these definitions, what we can extract, what we can conclude from these definitions. Okay, now somebody can object here that the definitions you are providing here are selective. You have been selecting only those definitions that are related to akhlaq, and you have been, they talk about maybe wahdatul wujud, they maybe talk about fana, or they talk about kashf, or they have something, something fishy in them. So, and in the Arabic textbooks of the tasawwuf these days, basically those that are being published in Egypt or in other Arab countries, they usually divide tasawwuf in two kinds. They say there are two divisions, broad divisions of tasawwuf. On the one hand, there is tasawwuf Sunni, or original tasawwuf, and on the other hand, there is a philosophical tasawwuf. So originally it was something pure, something good, something orthodox, and later on certain people inserted and introduced certain un-Islamic, some philosophical, theoretical elements into it. But I think this division or distinction is baseless. The basic thing which I want to present here is that if I ask you, I think this is known to everybody who has even the least amount of interest in tasawwuf. If I ask you to name one person who is whose name is connected to philosophical tasawwuf, whom you will name? Ibn Arabi. Ibn Arabi, the Spanish mystic who is also known as Shaykh Akbar, is, if there is one person who is to be blamed for philosophizing tasawwuf, he is going to be the poor Shaykh Akbar. So let's go to him right now and ask him what is tasawwuf, and let us see what does he say. So if he is the originator of Wahdatul Wujud, if he is the originator, he bases all that chapter on a saying by another Sufi, whose name is An-Nuri, I think. And this saying is that tasawwuf is morality. Tasawwufu khuluqun. Tasawwuf, so akhlaq. Whoever is better than you in akhlaq is better than you in tasawwuf. For the one who is higher than you in his akhlaq, he is higher, on a higher degree of tasawwuf. So this is the first line of this chapter. tasawwuf अच्छे अखलाक का नाम है, लिहाजा जो शख्स तुमसे अच्छे अखलाक में आगे बढ़ गया वो तसव्वुफ में भी तुमसे आगे निकल गया. तसव्वुफ अखलाक खुदाबंदी को, दिस इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट इन तसव्वुफ, especially tasawwuf of Ibn Arabi. तसव्वुफ अखलाक खुदाबंदी को अपनी शख्सियत का हिस्सा बनाना, to make divine character traits part of your character, to follow the example of God. और अल्लाह के साथ पाकीज़ा अखलाक पर मबनी मामला करने से इबारत है. When you are dealing with God, you need to deal with Him in a clean manner, in a pure manner, in a good manner. Okay. Then he talks about hikmah, wisdom. That wisdom is also necessary for tasawwuf. In order for you to have good akhlaq, you need to have some understanding. If you do not have understanding, necessary amount of understanding, then you cannot be good in terms of akhlaq. So, to that extent, and in view of that end, hikmah is necessary. So he says that किसी शख्स के सूफी कहलाने के लिए इसका हकीम होना जरूरी है. If someone lacks wisdom, you cannot call him or a सूफी. He concludes by saying, जो कुछ मैंने आपके सामने बयान किया इस चैप्टर में, सूफिया के नज़दीक तसव्वुफ इससे ज़्यादा और कुछ नहीं. When he is describing tasawwuf, he is not talking about any philosophy. He is not talking about any philosophical, any theoretical concept, but he is talking about akhlaq, the divine attributes, ar-rahma for example, or other divine attributes that you can know from divine names, and you need to make them part of your personality, part of your character. This is his concept of the ethics of divine names. Okay, so if we do not find philosophical tasawwuf, so-called philosophical tasawwuf in Ibn Arabi, where we are going to find it? Based on a discussion of the attempts to legitimize tasawwuf. Many books have been written, or even in the writings of early Sufis, you find people saying that tasawwuf is basically part of Islam, essential part of Islam, legitimate part of Islam, because it is a developed form of what we know as ihsan. There is a hadith which is known as Hadith Jibreel. It is authentic hadith. It is there in Bukhari, related by Umar radhiyallahu anhu, and this is a hadith from which people usually, take this concept. If most of you must have read the book by William Chittick, The Vision of Islam. This is an introduction to Islam which is based on a commentary on this hadith. Okay, what happens in this hadith can be summarized very briefly. The Prophet, peace be upon him, is sitting with his companions. Suddenly a person comes, sits with him, and starts asking him questions. So he asks him, what is Islam? What is Iman? He asks him, what is Islam? Then he asks him, what is Ihsan? The Prophet answers him, and after listening to each answer, the person who is unknown to all, nobody knows him, who is he, from where he has come. So after listening to each and every answer, he says, you are right, your question is right. So the companions say, this is what type of person is this? He is asking, and then he is also saying you are right, if he knows why he is asking. Anyway, so the Prophet, when he was asked about Iman, so he told about the articles of faith. You must believe in Allah, you must believe in His prophets, the books that He revealed, angels, day of judgment, etc. Then he asked about, when he was asked about Islam, so he talked about the duties, the religious obligations, the 5 pillars of Islam. You have to pray 5 times, you have to pay zakah, you have to. Then, when he was asked about ihsan, what is ihsan? So the Prophet said that ihsan is that you worship God as if you worship Allah, as if you see Him. And if you don't see Him, He sees you.
That's Iman or Ihsan?
Ihsan, this is ihsan, the third thing, ihsan. There was another question also which was about when the day of judgment is going to come. But here we are focusing on the first 3. So it is usually said, and it is correct, I agree with this point of view, that tasawwuf is a development, a building that is standing on the foundation of ihsan. Now, as I said, I agree with this view, but we need to understand this view correctly, the implications of this view correctly. If tasawwuf is ihsan, if tasawwuf is to be legitimized on the basis of this hadith, then we need to pay close attention to the words, to the to what is being said here in this hadith. So the rest of the discussion is based on a close analysis of this hadith Jibreel. When that person went away, Prophet peace be upon him told his companion that this was Jibreel who came to teach you your religion. He came to teach you your deen. So this shows us the importance of this hadith. That this is our deen in a nutshell. This hadith is our deen in a nutshell. This is the crux of our deen. Everything that is part of deen is there in this hadith. Okay, so we claim that the tasawwuf is based on on the concept of ihsan. So is a developed form of ihsan. Okay, so here are some points which we learn when we pay attention to this hadith, the words of this hadith. Okay, you have to compare two things. You can put Iman and Islam on the one hand, and you place ihsan on the other hand, and compare. So Iman tells you what you are going to have faith in. What are the objects of faith? In what you are going to believe, right? This is what we are being told by under the title of Iman, Aqidah. So our tradition developed a whole science based on this, which is called theology, which is called Ilmul Kalam, which deals with the details of this, the articles of our faith. Then go to Islam. Islam tells us you need to pray. So there are a number of details. कितनी रकत पढ़नी है, किस वक्त पे पढ़नी है नमाज, details जो है, minor details. A whole science also developed out of it, on this foundation, which is called jurisprudence or Islamic law or fiqh. Okay, when you come to ihsan, another science develops on this foundation, which is called tasawwuf. But what is the meaning of this? That the science of tasawwuf is based on ihsan. Now if you compare Iman and Islam to tasawwuf, so as I said, in Iman you are being told what to believe in. In Islam you are being told what to do, what you are going to do. So here we are dealing with what? Okay, so let us keep to this table. You can read the whatever is written yourself. Okay, so you see deen has two basic things. It has two levels basically. The first level is that of what? On the first level of deed you are being told what to believe in, Iman, what to do, which is Islam. Okay, now on this foundation of Iman, as I said, you can see this building of Ilmul Kalam, theology, and on the foundation of Islam you see the building of fiqh standing. Okay, now if you go to the extreme, this side, you see here that these are necessary for salvation. If you lack faith in any of these articles, if somebody lacks faith in Allah or in the Prophet or in angels or in the Day of Judgment, then his salvation as a Muslim is in danger. The same thing can be said about the action. These are the obligations. A Muslim must do these 5 things. So this level of deen, salvation depends on it. Salvation depends on it. Okay. Now there is a second level, second layer within the ingredients of deen. All these things we are drawing from the same hadith. Okay. Here we have the second level, which deals with how. Now if you look at the words, once again, if you consider the words of ihsan, the Prophet did not, when he was answering the question about ihsan, he was not telling us what to do. He did not give any additional action. He did not give any additional aqidah. Aqidah had been given before when he was explaining Iman, and the actions, obligatory actions, have also been explained before. So what did he say in ihsan? He only told us how we are going to have faith. There must be ikhlas, and how we are going to pray, how we are going to do the ibadat. Ibadat कैसे करनी है, अंदरूनी कैफियत उसकी क्या होनी चाहिए. So this means that if tasawwuf is based on ihsan, and if its legitimacy depends on this hadith, then it does not have the right, and it does not, as a matter of fact, it doesn't give you new aqidah, and it does not make any additional obligation for you. That's why when we come to this side, so there we said that these things are necessary for salvation. As far as this ihsan, that you pray as if you are seeing God, these are not necessary for salvation. If you do just this, then you may, with the grace of God, you may have salvation if He has mercy on you. But if you have all this, but you lack this thing, then this is only necessary for perfection. Your ibadat, your deen might not be perfect. It might be on some low level, but still you have fulfilled the condition of salvation. So this is what we learn from the view that tasawwuf is a developed form of hadith. अगर तसव्वुफ वाकई एहसान पर मबनी है, इसे सिर्फ ये बताना है कि इबादत में एहसान कैसे हासिल करना है, इसे ना तो कोई नया अकीदा देना है, ना इजाफी अमल. Okay, now what I am saying here in the second sentence, please pay attention to this. The relationship of tasawwuf with the rest of religion is of what type? I say that this relationship is adverbial. It is not verbial, because it does not give you any new action. It does not tell any new obligatory action. It tells you how to do whatever you are already doing. Whatever you are already doing. You know that you are going to pray. You know you have to have in your character certain akhlaqi or moral qualities. How you are going to do that? You think you know that there are certain imperfections, moral imperfections, from which you need to be pure, which you must not have. For example, pride. Pride is the most dangerous of the sins. So now we know, everybody knows this, that we need to do these things, we need to have these moral qualities, and we need to avoid those moral qualities. But the problem where tasawwuf comes into play is that we find ourselves unable to do what we know we have to do. For instance, I give you just one or two interesting examples. Somebody has the bad habit of backbiting. So you know it's bad, you want to get rid of this, but you can't. So here the role of a Sufi master comes into play. He is going to tell you the tricks. He is going to tell you how you are going to get rid of this. I have written for you here an example, interesting example. Maulana Ashraf Ali Thanvi was asked this question by someone, that I have this bad habit of backbiting, so what should I do? So he told that gentleman that whenever you do this thing, what you should do is you go to that person whom you mentioned or said something bad. You go to him, tell him what you said, and ask his forgiveness. Apologize. So you will do this one time, second time, third time, and then you will say this is not affordable. So if you look at the there is a book by the same Sheikh, Tarbiyatul Salik, you can find it in the writings of any Sufi who has interactions, whose interaction with their followers are recorded. That people come to them with these type of problems, and they give them the tips, the ways, the tips. Now these tips, what is their legal status? Their legal status is not obligatory. If you lack something in Islam, you are in problem. If you lack something in Iman, you are in problem. But if you lack something in Ihsan, then you are in a problem, but in a different way, not essentially. Your salvation is not in danger. So the basic point which I want to emphasize here is that those who say that tasawwuf is a parallel religion with Islam, they neglect this important point, that what the Sufis are prescribing, what is the nature of this prescription. They suppose as if the Sufi Sheikh is standing on the other side, on the opposite side of the Prophet. The Prophet is saying something, and the Sufi is saying something else, right? As if the role of Sufi master is at a par with the Prophet. This is not the case. The Sufis just give you, they do not give you anything new. If you ask them that they should prescribe something obligatory for you, they will be angry. And I have here two quotation. You will says, yeah, when the jurists, the fuqaha, they ask you, what have you learned from your study of the Tasawwuf, or what you have learned from the Sufis? So what should you tell them? You should tell them that I have learned from them the way, how to be excellent in the performance of the actions that I have learned from you. I have learned from you, O Fuqaha, the commandments, the obligations of Islam. But how to be perfect in doing those perfection, in doing those obligations, those actions. This is what I have learned from the Sufis. So this is what the Sufis tell you. They do not give you any new aqidah. They do not make anything obligatory for you, and there are some interesting implications for this. If you compare the way different sects, theological sects, deal with each other or feel towards each other, and the way followers of different Sufi paths feel toward each other, you will find a world of difference. If somebody knows that the other person is, I am Sunni, so the other person is Shia, or I am Shia and the other person is Sunni, so there is sort of friction. The reason behind this interesting and important difference is that the Sufi Salasil or the Sufi orders, they do not think that we possess the only way to salvation. They do not, they never claim this. And if any Sufi ever claims this, then you can blame him for creating a religion parallel to Islam. Because if there are different religions, they are parallel only in the case when each one of them is saying that I have got the key to salvation, and the others, they have nothing. So this critique of the Tasawwuf, with which we started our discussion, its basic problem, the first problem was that it did not start by a definition of Tasawwuf, what Tasawwuf is. And the second problem is that it does not seem to understand what makes something a religion. And this characteristic of the Tasawwuf, that the Sufis never say that your salvation depends on what we tell you, or if you do not do what we are asking you to do, then you are going to go to the that one place. Okay, this is what I have here. So thank you very much.